So let me start by sharing what a franchise is. Some of you may know this, but a franchise is a contract between a local unit of government, in our case, the city, and a utility. And that franchise really governs two things. It governs the use of the public rights of way, right? Our streets, think where someone like Comcast or DTCast might lay pipes or their infrastructure. It governs what they do, what kind of quality they have to return infrastructure to, the kinds of communications that may take place between the city and that utility, kind of all elements about the use of that public rights of way. And the second thing in Michigan that a franchise does is it sets the conditions under which that company, it doesn't have to be a utility, but that company may, for a set period of time, provide that specific service, right? So one governs use of rights of ways, the other governs kind of, if you will, the way they operate in the community. And we've also seen in recent years, franchises have included some additional terms, including in places like Chicago, Salt Lake City, and San Diego, where they've successfully advanced affordability, equity, and clean energy goals via their franchises or via associated agreements, often known as city utility partnerships, which come out of franchise negotiations. Thanks, y'all. And you can find more about this on our website. But I do want to take a moment, and I'm not going to go through this image. Many of you know this, but for those who don't, and for our viewers, the gas system is actually quite complicated. It's not as simple as we get gas out of the system, we move it through pipes, and instantly it's in your home. There's actually a lot that goes into natural gas use in a home or in a business, all the way from kind of the production side of things where we're drilling, we have to do separation within that system, we have to refine the materials that are coming out, and that can take lots of different forms depending on the specific gas and where we get it from. There's, of course, the transmission system, and then there's our distribution system, let alone the point of use in our homes or businesses. And what this means is, one, it's complicated, but two, there's actually a lot of energy that goes into this process to extract energy. And there's a lot of opportunity for the system to be inefficient. And we've learned more and more over the last several years about methane leakages, as an example. And of course, I should not take this for granted. Natural gas is primarily methane, right? So it is an incredibly potent greenhouse gas, up to 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide as it's released into the atmosphere. And so any leakage of methane through this system is really significant in terms of our climate goals and objectives. So I just want to share that this is important for us as we're looking at how we heat our homes in a safe, healthy, and affordable way. And of course, we've got our climate goals. And so we want to understand how we can minimize both the impacts in terms of climate from the way that we heat our homes and the impacts on, family issues like pocketbook issues that people are facing as our energy prices are rising. So just a little history here about Ann Arbor's heating franchise. Our last heating franchise was adopted in 1997. It's a 30-year franchise. This is pretty traditional in the field. In fact, in Michigan, most franchises are 30 years. It's a traditional franchise, largely governing the rights of way. It expires in 2027, but also in Michigan, franchises are revocable at will unless they go to a vote of the people, and a vote of the people can allow them to extend beyond 30 years, but that's rarely done because things change, right? And 30 years is a lot of time. You sort of want to get the best deal you can, and then you go about your business. Now, I do also want to point out that in Michigan, you must have a franchise to provide a utility service. In a second, I'll talk about some of the research we've been doing on our side. There are parts of the country right now that have continued having utility services while still negotiating an expired franchise. That would not be legal in Michigan. So we must have a franchise to provide a given service. And we are very, very interested in looking to integrate our residents' desires for clean, safe, healthy, affordable, and reliable heat into any future franchise. And I have franchises because we are open to lots of different pathways for how we can achieve these goals of clean, safe, healthy, affordable, reliable heating for our residents. And I'm going to use the word heating, but I want to name heating. It's truly what we're talking about here. If you think about, you heat your food, you heat your home, you heat your water. So that's a framework we'll stick with on this. So just quickly, in terms of what we've done today, we have been reviewing a lot of city franchises, especially newer franchises, and franchises from peer cities that have similarly aggressive climate and equity goals. We've spoken to a number of our peers around the nation. So certainly we've read the materials that they have, but we've also talked to them about their experience, why they chose to do what they did, how they negotiated for what they did, kind of their rationale and their thinking. We certainly have reviewed Ann Arbor's previous franchise, and you can find that. Actually, if you're interested, it's listed online. And then we started speaking internally with our other staffs about opportunity for improvement, right? So thinking about the folks that work in the rights of way, what's working really, really well right now in terms of coordination and what's not, and where are there opportunities for refinement. And then we have continued to look at and start talking to other utilities that are doing really aggressive things around affordability, safety, health, and climate action to understand kind of the heating solutions that they're pursuing. And then, this, Council adopted a resolution a few weeks ago directing the city administrator to begin negotiating a new franchise. Importantly, that franchise and that resolution is agnostic to the provider of the service, but reiterates the goals and the objectives. We also launched a website that we're keeping up to date as we're finding more information, and you can see that. And we have launched an email address to start gathering feedback, and we have received some feedback from residents. It's franchisefeedback@a2gov.org, where we're just looking for residents' ideas, their concerns, what they're hopeful for in terms of what a franchise looks like, what they want to make sure that we're thinking about. We're seeing some stories of individuals, their lived experience, and what they want to make sure that we're very intentional about addressing as we move forward in this process. So this is the last kind of talking thing I'm going to put out there. This slide and the next slide just has some general seating questions. This is generative only. Please don't take this as anything other than that. But the idea, as we looked across all these other franchises, and we've been thinking about the goals that we have in the community, some of the things that we've started talking about are negotiating around contract length, certainly the rights of way, how people operate, the communications in that system, finding alternative sources of heating, such as district geothermal or network geothermal systems, having deeper energy efficiency programs, creating new low-income programs, enhancing safety. Gas is not an inherently safe system. So what are we going to do to make sure that we have safety improvements? Working on air quality and health enhancements, price stabilization, right? We've seen fluctuations over the last 2 years in terms of our energy prices. What can we do in that space? Greater accountability, greater transparency into how things operate, coordination, and of course, climate action. So these are some of the variables I just want to put forward as you're starting to think. And now I'm going to be quiet. I'm not meant to answer questions in this session, as you can probably tell. I don't think my voice could take much more. I'm just going to start taking notes, but these are up here just to kind of get you thinking. So Chair Mirsky, I think I'll turn it over to you, and I'm going to grab a pen and paper.
Thank you, Missy. So I think that's really an excellent framing and one that leaves things wide open for our input and for discussion. And that's exactly what we wanted to do tonight. And I think I can safely say, since this is a process that is likely to take a couple of years, that just because you don't say something tonight, that doesn't mean that you can't raise a point next week or next month or potentially even next year. So keep that in mind. And I'm sure that we will be, as a commission, as well as the city, and as well as any maybe support resources we're using, we'll be looking at developments in this field across the country so that we're able to use those lessons learned and best practices here. So with that said, I'd like to open things up for comments and discussion. Commissioner McComber.
I'm curious to know how much leverage we have. Have other cities been able to exercise leverage to achieve some of these goals through their franchise negotiations?
So I'll take that question, but I really don't mean to have a Q&A right now. I'm not going to my voice isn't going to take it. I'm sorry. So I'll share that, yes, they have. And that's why we pointed to some other examples. Happy to come back with more.
Yeah, that's good. So what we'll do here is where it's appropriate and possible, we're just going to capture these points. And the city has a website, as was shown. And so hopefully some of these questions, Missy, maybe maybe we can just say that I can't remember if there's an FAQ. I think there is. Is there an FAQ already there?
And we do point to some other cities. So
right.
And
so
the ones that call out explicitly.
Right. With that in mind, let's take this as an opportunity to add questions that could be addressed on the FAQ, not only for our purposes, but also to inform the general public. So, Commissioner Smith.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so certainly a great starting point in terms of ideas to consider as part of franchise here. I'd be interested and totally understood that this answer may need to be forthcoming. But if you could share the outcomes of the peer city review and any learnings in that process to help us potentially leverage this opportunity to not only further decarbonization goals but provide clean, safe, reliable energy here. I think that may be helpful if at all possible. And then I think we could provide, be able to better leverage that to provide more specific recommendations in turn.
Thank you. Commissioner McKenna.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, Missy, for being here and for sharing this with us. It means a lot to me that we kind of get to look at it together first before it really goes out to the broader audience. And I look forward to participating along the way. I want to share a couple of things that come to mind. Having worked in I guess policy strategy, not specifically in policy, but in strategy, like I mentioned previously in my work with Massachusetts cities and towns that were trying to ban natural gas. There was an effort there, and I know that Missy may be already looking to this, but there was an effort there in Massachusetts because of actually a natural gas explosion that occurred. I believe it was in 2017. There was I think there was a gas utility bankruptcy that happened there, and ultimately there was a chance for actually it was like a self-organized nonprofit along with city and town governments to come together to actually propose a change, like almost very similar in the nature of what's being proposed, or at least the idea that's being proposed, and the kinds of goals around affordability, safety, definitely climate was at the top of the list of goals. And what was proposed in Eastern Massachusetts was this idea of a geothermal network that would provide heating services to businesses and homes in these mainly residential districts on the East Coast. And so I looked at that as one of the, I believe that they're implementing it now. It was funded through, like I mentioned, this bankruptcy of the utility. And so it's cool because they had a lot of funds going into it and a lot of movement around, right? Like a bit of a crisis. So I don't know, I wasn't intending to say this, but I guess I would just advocate for us all to think about actually what we're in as our own kind of crisis and our own kind of opportunity. And although it's not being motivated by, something incredibly tragic, I think that that's great for us. But I think that we should still move with urgency. And I really support what's being proposed. But I will say, I love the idea of the research being done with other cities and states, but I would like to kind of raise my concern for, I think, the most intricate part of what would need to happen to actually make an alternative heating franchise work, which is that basically proper enmeshment, not a great word from psychology, but like mixing of energy efficiency retrofits and whatever alternative energy system is proposed. I think that that's a place where Ann Arbor could really be a leader. And I know that a lot of work in energy efficiency retrofits has already been proposed. We heard some great information last time, Missy, about the kind of like deeper engagement with citizens through the concierge process, or just like really getting folks what they need. And so, yeah, I would just stress my support for high quality retrofits coming along with anything that's proposed in terms of a renegotiation of a franchise or a potential alternative energy source. I think just Ann Arbor has the potential to really go above and beyond even what other cities have done. And I think that we shouldn't limit ourselves to just kind of sitting within the what others have done, but really taking the opportunity, given the opportunity that we have with this 2.5 or 3 years to renegotiate and to really dream this up. I think putting everything we have behind it is a great move. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Before I call on the next commissioners, I just want to piggyback on that. For other commissioners and for the general public's interest, there's a nonprofit in the Boston area called HEAT, HEET, and I encourage everyone to look at their website. There are also a couple of videos, actually several videos where they're like webinars or talking about the piloting process. I think Claire mentioned there's pilots that are already at least in process. So I encourage all of you to look at what's going on there, and there's probably other such developments, because this is something that's obviously starting to catch on. There's a lot of other people that are looking this at an opportunity. So maybe, Missy, you can just give a thumbs up or thumbs down. Is HEAT mentioned on the city webpage for the gas franchise?
And I don't know if they are, but we've talked to them a lot, so I can easily add them. And I am going to risk it and say two things really quick. One, Commissioner McComber, and Claire, you mentioned this too. The examples I gave are from other franchises, right? Like, so the ideas of contract length or efficiency, like that's coming from other franchise agreements. So you're starting to see like that, right? The kinds of things. No one has asked for everything that I put on that list, but some have asked for many of those things. And then secondly, I've heard it a few times that this will take until 2027. It's actually not the direction we've been given. We've been given to move as fast as possible. And so we have a goal of within a year and a half to have a renegotiated franchise, because they're terminable at will. So I just want to name that you have a lot of time to think about this, but this is not, oh, ho hum, let's twiddle our fingers till 2027 and have a franchise.
Good points. Commissioner Hart.
Hi, thanks for that. I think my comment is just a clarification about, I think, heating in the franchise. And it's as much a question about what are we really after in the outcomes. And it seems to me that a big part of it is really about thermal comfort, and how we achieve thermal comfort through a variety of different means. And so part of that is just to raise the question in terms of how what are the limitations? What are the requirements? Is this about heating, or is this really about the comfort of people in their homes, in their ability to have warm water, cool water, and comfort in a variety of contexts, versus heating writ large? And so, I don't know the extent to which repitching that kind of approach changes or diversifies the conversation some, but it's just a look, across a variety of different ways in which we might be able to achieve comfort through a variety of different options.
Others, I think Commissioner Calvin Garcia, you had your hand up, but you took it down, or did you have anything to say or share?
Several of the commissioners who have spoken already, and also Missy, you answered my questions. I had several questions, and you guys covered it. So thank you.
Great. Others. So I'm going to rattle off a couple of things, and that may allow people also to come up with their own ideas. First of all, I'm wondering, and all these can be answered later, so I don't think you have to attempt to answer any of these tonight. Are there compliance reviews with the current franchise? And has DTE been in compliance with the, let's say, requirements in the franchise? Related to that, I think one of the things that we definitely want to think about are what kind of SMART goals we want to have for all the different kinds of parameters that you've talked about, and what those associated metrics would be, and what the associated benchmarks or targets would be, not just as a goal 10 or 30 years or whatever it might be out, but hopefully, like goals every year or every 5 years or something like that. Some other things that I noted down was who else if not DTE, and that doesn't again need to be answered. And could that, for example, be a city-owned heating or natural gas franchise? And could that be, for example, an extension of the SEU or an extension of a fully municipal utility like we've discussed on the electrical side? Do those have to stay separate, or could they be merged, or could they be merged with there's still two franchises, but maybe the same entity, like a city-owned entity holding that franchise? And then you talked about the aggressive timeline. That's good to hear. The question that I have is, if we are not able to achieve the timeline in the desired, let's say 1.5 year target, it sounds like then we would still have another 1.5 years roughly to be able to go out and find an alternative solution. And I think that that's very prudent. We don't want to negotiate, and then feel like we're backed into a corner without having a some fallback plan, and not just obviously one that we don't really favor, but a good fallback plan. And then I'm almost certain that this is part of the plan. So there's not only geothermal, but we also have a large wastewater infrastructure. And if you think of all of the showers that we take and all of the other things that we do, and we flush that down into the sewer system, that's one massive geothermal network. So hopefully that's something that we can also consider that potentially could be leveraged and utilized in the new franchise agreement that we negotiate. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to put out there. I'm pretty sure all these things have already been thought of, because I know we have really capable staff and that you've been talking to other entities, but these may be ticklers that lead to other kinds of ideas. So those are the ideas that I had, and hopefully others in the meantime have come up with a few more comments and insights that they want to share. Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, thanks, John. First of all, I agree with a lot of what's already been said. The geothermal possibilities, I mean, that would be great if we could get something like that as a potential option, or I don't even know what other technologies could possibly be similar to that, but I guess possibly it could also have more incentives that would allow a person to transition to something in their own home. I don't know if that's something that could be part of the franchise or not agreement. I don't know how likely it is, or other places have done this, but getting a shorter time period than 30 years certainly would give us more leverage, and we could see where things are going. And I mean, we'll know, where we are with our climate goals, maybe a 10-year agreement, possibly. You could also maybe get more sophisticated with it in terms of certain things that we would like to see, certain conditions that we'd want to be met within a certain number of years in order for the agreement to continue. That would give us more outs from the agreement if they're not doing the things that we want them to do in terms of climate goals or et cetera. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Others? I'll raise two other points that I forgot to mention that have been expressed to me, and that is whether or not the franchise agreement should be transparent in terms of its use of green natural gas. I think there's a lot of concern that we had a presentation, for example, from DTE on what they're doing in the gas area. And there's, I think, probably concern in the residents, among residents, that potentially this is an opportunity for DTE to be able to provide green gas. I think another question that residents want to understand is what, if any, role hydrogen might play. As far as I know, hydrogen can be mixed in with natural gas, or possibly even used as a substitute, with a lot of its own questions and issues. So I think we want to make sure that we're transparent with the general public on what we're doing in both of those regards as well. Go ahead, Missy, do you want to say something?
I was just going to close out, unless, yeah, I will first thank you all so much for your comments. There were two issues I just want to really quickly name, which is we probably will not form a municipal utility on gas because we want to phase down gas. And that would be we couldn't make that business model work, right? If you're trying to drive your model down. That said, there are other things. So I just wanted to name that's the one that I'm not personally super keen on getting a gas franchise if gas isn't safe, healthy, affordable, and reliable. And then for biogas, just want to share, I don't think we updated you all because we are working on lots of things, but we submitted comments to the Michigan Public Service Commission for their carbon reduction program. A lot of applications that came into that program were biogas-based applications, and we requested denial of all of them as staff based on the elements of that. So biogas it's going to have to be something like a biodigester at the wastewater treatment plant, where we're taking, something that's a continual product and transitioning it over. That is my opinion on this issue, but there's very few, I would argue, actual green gas solutions. And perhaps, again, this is just Missy speaking, I think that we may want to preserve those for the hard to decarbonize industries, but that's just my stance. All right, let me close out here with just what's next. And thank you all so much. I know this is a heady. That was maybe not intentional, but I'm enjoying it a lot. That was a heady conversation. So coming soon, we've got town halls that we're starting. We're just starting to look at the calendar right now. You were our first group to go have conversations. So we're going to go just get ideas from a slew of different stakeholders, especially folks who have no idea about this topic, but really obviously want to make sure that they have heat when they need it. We also are working on a request for ideas. This is for anyone in the public, but also, and perhaps more, for industry and our utility partners around the country to come and give us their ideas. What do you think you could do to help us decarbonize our heating system to make sure we have safe, healthy, and affordable heating for every resident in Ann Arbor? So that we're basically saying to the marketplace, bring us your really good ideas too. We'll release all of the ideas that come so the public can see them. And then in the interim, if anyone has other thoughts or feedback, the website is open. So please do share any thoughts you have at franchisefeedback@a2gov.org. And that can be, as I mentioned before, we've already got some, but it can be of any flavor. A really great idea that you have, a concern that you're holding, something you want to make sure we consider in the negotiations. Anything is welcome as we move forward. And then the last thing I'd share is staff have started to reach out to utilities, including DT Gas, but others that have goals of decarbonizing heating, to understand the services they provide and to honestly build a bench, if you will, of organizations that we could be in discussions with to make sure that Ann Arborites get the very best deal and best solution to ensure that they have safe, healthy, and affordable heating. Because you've seen this on our website, but in the end, I believe this with my whole heart. No one should have to sacrifice their health to heat and cool their homes. And that's what we believe fundamentally in our office. And we're committed to finding solutions that help people do that. So thanks.